Welcome back, Commander. My name's Tim, and in this video, I'm going to be speaking to one of the legends of the modding community. If this is your first time here, I make videos on Mass Effect, and I already have a ton of videos on my channel already, so make sure you check them out after you finish this one. If you enjoy modding your games, or if you're a potential modder yourself, this is definitely an interview for you. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. Today's guest is a legend with the modding community. He has contact with almost every active veteran modder, runs the largest private development workshop community, has ties to development toolkits, and is the creator of the ALOV video mod, which enhances the original game cutscenes to 4K resolutions. On Reddit, Discord, and Nexus mods, he goes by the name of Audemus. Welcome to the channel. So for people that don't know you, if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So I've been part of the modding community for a few years now. I've sort of found myself in the position of being an unofficial spokesperson. As you say, I run the private development workshop. I'm the admin of the biggest Mass Effect modding Discord. I'm part of Nexus's moderation team for Mass Effect modding. I work with the toolset developers, and I was also one of the modders who were in talks with BioWare before the release of Legendary Edition.
Oh, excellent, excellent. So how long have you been modding games?
Well, I guess the first time that I modded was Knights of the Old Republic, and that was back when I was, God, I must have been 9. Yeah. Yeah, it was, they were, as you can probably imagine, they were terrible mods. I mean, but yeah, they were back on Filefront back in the day. So I'm pretty sure they're gone now, thank God. But yeah, I mean, I've modded games, ever since then, really. Mass Effect is really the one where I've been a mod author, but I've been lurking in modding communities, for a very long time.
Excellent. So what was the Star Wars? What was your first mod that you did?
Oh, I was part of the what was it? It was the Brotherhood of Shadow team. I was one of the testers on that, and I kind of helped play around with like testing and building some of the new levels for that. It was kind of like a sort of this big DLC sized mod that added in like new characters and quests and stuff. It was a very, very cool mod if you know about Brotherhood of Shadow.
Oh, excellent, excellent. I did play the expanded mod where they had a whole new planet. I think it was.
Yeah, M478. Yeah,
That's the one. Yeah,
that was the Total 2. Yeah.
Yeah, it was an awesome planet. That was. Yeah, it was really good, really good. So my next question was going to be the only was Mass Effect the only game you modded, but as you can say there, you've been modding since you were age of 9. Is it hard to get into modding?
I guess. I mean, I really think it depends on the game, because modding communities are built around their modding tools, and the modding tools really dictate what you can and can't make. So I think for, say, if you were getting into Skyrim modding or Fallout modding, you're going to have a really easy time because you've got a huge community of modders, a modding tool set that is supported by Bethesda. And really, if you're stuck with anything, somebody will be able to help you out, and you'll probably have an easy time with their interface. There are some mods where you literally need to go in and hex edit, game files in order to be able to modify them. So you are probably going to need to have at least some computer programming knowledge for that. But yeah, for I think for the most part, depending on what you want to do with modding, it can be easier, it can be harder. For Mass Effect, it's kind of a mix of both, depending on what you want to do. So yeah.
Okay, so your main mod that you made for Mass Effect was the locked video mods. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? What is it? Do you had what made you want to make that mod in the first place?
Yeah, so this was a few years ago now. Creeper Lava was releasing the a lot of textures mod, and playing through that, I was thinking, wow, this is almost remaster level at this point. But as I was playing through it, I was just looking at those videos and thinking, if only those videos were higher resolution, we could have this sort of consistent 4K experience throughout the whole trilogy. But I couldn't think of a way of doing it until Topaz released some video AI upscaling tools. I think the first one that they released was Gigapixel, And so when Melin is another modder within the scene. He works on mods like the Expanded Galaxy mod. We were playing around with restoring the opening cutscene to Mass Effect 3 because there was an extended version that was in the demo of the game that didn't make it into the end. And so we were pulling that from YouTube. And we ended up using AI upscaling software to kind of restore the quality a bit and stitch it back together. And when we were doing that, we were thinking, wow, we could maybe apply this technique to every single video in the game and get it up to 4K. And so we ended up putting a call out, and we got just a whole bunch of people who came in, and we just blitzed through like 300,000 frames of video in about 3-4 weeks and got this mod uploaded. It was one of probably the biggest and fastest turnaround for any Mass Effect mod ever. It was pretty impressive. And so, yeah, ever since then, we've been working on new techniques. So one of the things that we did for the 2.0 release of a lot of videos was we actually went back and reconstructed about half of all of the pre-rendered cutscenes of Mass Effect 1 in Blender. We recreated the entire thing from scratch at 60 FPS in 4K with new effects and things like that. And we wanted to make sure that it was because the issue with that was that the upscale just wasn't very good because it wasn't CG. The 720p, it was like, it had low res textures, and so there wasn't much we could do with it. And so we essentially ended up doing what BioWare ended up doing with Legendary Edition, which was recreating the entire scene and re-rendering it out. And obviously, it can't hold a candle to Legendary Edition's videos, but I'm really proud of what we did there. And I think the new advancements that we have in the mod are going to really blow people away when they see it. So I'm very excited.
Well, you was consulting with BioWare on the Legendary Edition. Mm-hmm. Did you have plans to bring your mod across to the new game, or have they already surpassed what you did with that mod?
Yeah, so it was interesting because I knew that there were going to be some things that were better and probably some things that weren't better. What we started doing, immediately when preload happened, the game hadn't even come out, but we were looking at the files because we could play the video files, and we noticed that some of the videos had been re-rendered completely, and some of them had clearly just been upscaled. And so we were going through and we were comparing them to what we did, and we noticed that these clearly have a better sort of cleaner base to them, but our videos still looked sharper and cleaner in some ways. So what we've decided to do is we're going to rebuild the entire thing from scratch. So what we're doing now is we're going through, we're analyzing the resolution of each frame, we're looking at different AI upscaling models and sharpening passes, and we're just and we're going to make sure that every single video looks as good as it can possibly be. Because when we were making the original upscale for the first release of a lot of videos, we were using Gigapixel, which is designed to upscale photos. It's not designed to upscale videos. Because that tool wasn't available then, but it is now. And so we're going to be using a lot of new video upscaling techniques to make these videos look a lot better. So yeah, I'm definitely going to be making the mod for Legendary Edition. It will probably be out hopefully maybe early September. We'll see how it goes, but we're going full steam ahead right now. But yeah, what you'll find is that Legendary Edition's videos are mostly 1080p, while ALOV is 4K. So we're going to be making sure that with our mods, no matter if you're playing the original trilogy or Legendary Edition, you'll be playing with the absolute best 4K experience across the entire thing with all DLC. So yeah.
That's certainly something to look forward to. Yeah, absolutely.
There's a lot of work that goes into it, as you can imagine.
Yeah, yours is definitely one of the ones that I had in my original games. So, yeah, I'm certainly looking forward to that. Are you currently working? Is that the only one that you're working on at the moment? Or are you going to be working on other mods for the Legendary Edition as well? Or
oh yeah. I've got some stuff in the works. One of which is still in a kind of design phase right now, but I don't mind talking about it a little bit. Basically, what I'm going to be doing is making a spiritual successor to John P's alternate Mass Effect happy ending mod. It's basically going to be an expanded version of that's going to be building off Chris Hepler's ending idea. Chris Hepler, if you weren't aware, is he was kind of like the lore master for Mass Effect, and he did an interview a couple months ago where he talked about how we wanted to use a concept where the Crucible's energy used sort of this effect that weakened the nuclear strong force between atoms, and that was going to be the way that the Reapers were destroyed. And so I'm basically going to be taking that happy ending mod concept, but kind of trying to build a explanation in the lore as to how this works, so that it feels a little bit less like fan wish fulfillment, and it feels a little bit more like something that is actually being explained in the game. So yeah, that's still in the design phase at the moment. We're still working on figuring out how we're going to explain that and how things are going to play out. But that's going to be my next big project after a lot of videos, because once ALOV's done, it's pretty much finished. Don't need to work on it anymore. And the other big mod that I'm going to be working on in a support role is our community patch. And the community patch is going to be a thing that a lot of the veteran modders in the community are working towards, which is essentially a completely new modding framework for the for Legendary Edition. So the idea is that we're going to be building new streaming systems and compatibility systems that allow for people to build on top of the patch for very easy compatibility between mods. So what we're going to do is release a huge blanket bug fixing mod for the entire trilogy, and then people can build their changes onto that very easily and seamlessly. So yeah, the idea of that is just, you know, how can we make sure that modding for the community is easier and not just for individuals?
That's one of the biggest questions I have when I'm selecting it. You know, you normally have a big list of, well, you need this one to work with this one, and you need to really have these two to match up. Is that tool into just like simplify and streamline everything?
Yeah, that's one of the big things that we've been trying to do in the modding community, because ever since M Gamers forked the Mass Effect 3 Explorer toolset and started building that alongside his mod manager, we've really been trying to focus in the community. Okay, how can we make sure that the modding experience is easier, not just for end users, but developers as well, and also making sure that the relationship between those two is as clean as possible, because, you know, the last thing you want is bickering and drama and technical limitations causing fractures within a community. So streamlining and making that process simple for everyone just uplifts everyone to a whole new level of modding.
Wonderful. We've had some viewer questions come in. Mm-hmm. Satchel Gizmo says, it's great to see modders breathe new life into games and nearly a decade old. With the release of Legendary Edition, where do you see the modding community in a decade from now?
That is a very good question. And I think that is really going to depend on how we can build a strong foundation moving forward. Because when you look at how the mod scene started for Mass Effect 3 in particular, because we couldn't really mod ME1 and ME2 for a while, they were built on very primitive modding tools, and those modding tools developed over time. And over time, it became a bigger and bigger issue to support a complex mod setup. And so my hope is that in 10 years, we're going to have laid such an excellent foundation that the advancements in both modding tools and all the new people coming into the scene is going to make sure that we've got a really vibrant and easy to install palette of mods that people can use. Yeah, and I think it's going to be really interesting to see how that develops, you know, with new Mass Effect games. You know, do the new Mass Effect games offer concepts and ideas that we can take back into the trilogy? Are we going to be able to mod new Mass Effect games to that kind of level? It's those are all things that we can't answer right now, but I'm very hopeful that the work that we do now is going to lay the foundations for making sure that that's going to be not just possible, but easy 10 years down the line.
Luis Sanchez says he just recently finished modding Mass Effect 1 and 2. It was a super easy experience and was happy that modders are doing all the hard work for them. He doesn't have any questions, but he just wanted to offer his support to you and behind every modder out there for enhancing the game's experience. So just a bit of a thank you from Louis there.
Well, thank you, Louis. That means a lot. And I know that a lot of us in the community are really happy when we see people had such a great experience using our mods.
Bro Garrus, he says some of them sound great, but he wishes they could use them on console. Do you think console modding is in Mass Effect's going to be available at any point? Do you think BioWare could follow in like Bethesda's use of like the Creation Club? Is that something that might be possible further down the line, or is it just going to be PC only?
Well, this is a question that we get asked a lot in the community, and it's a really heartbreaking answer, which is, I mean, the short answer is no. It's almost certainly never going to happen. The reason for that is because, particularly for the Mass Effect trilogy, BioWare forked the engine for Unreal Engine 3, and they made a lot of modifications to it that make it very unfriendly to modding. Because Unreal Engine 3 in principle was actually fairly moddable, but they did not design the code of that game for mod support in mind, which means that if they were to build modding support onto that, it would be an absolutely mammoth task. In fact, I would even go as far to say that it's not possible to do at this stage, because that's the kind of thing that needs to be done early stages in sort of the pre-production, early prototype development of a game, especially when you're building up the engine. And so that's not something that they could possibly support for the Mass Effect trilogy at this point. When it comes to future Mass Effect games, I think that it's the EA's policy regarding modding is that they don't officially support it. The work that they did with us was supporting the community, and that's how they phrased it to us. It was, how can we support you as a community, rather than how can we ourselves offer mod support. And so because of that, I think that EA's policy means that mod support probably isn't going to end up in any future Mass Effect game, especially if it's going to be Frostbite. We do have Frostbite modding tools, but they're closed source, and the lead developer for that left to work at DICE. And so the development of those tools has slowed down a lot. So yeah, I mean, if Mass Effect 4 or Mass Effect 5 ended up in Unreal Engine 4, maybe, but I can't see it going to the console, just because it's very difficult for a developer to offer console support for a game engine that they don't even own. And BioWare don't own. I think the last time that they offered official mod support was for Dragon Age. They offered a toolset for that because they own the engine, and that was something they could do. So yeah, that's kind of the technical explanation. Unfortunately, it's almost certainly never going to happen, just because of all the issues that come along with that. So yeah,
that's fair. That's fair. Kara Spy says, can we expect mods like LOT or ALOV coming to Legendary Edition to make it even better than it already does? I mean, I know you spoke about it a bit earlier. Is there still room for improvement with the Legendary Edition, do you think?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would go as far to say is that Legendary Edition is a really solid new foundation for us to build a new modding community. But you know, they made some improvements over us in some ways, and we made some improvements over them in some ways. And so for us now, how do we bring that up to parity? You know, how do we bring Legendary Edition changes that were here up to here, and then how do we bring everything sort of up to here? And I think that, like, you know, as I was saying before, there are some videos that are better, there are some textures that are better, there's some things that modders did, especially things that were done by hand, like textures that were redrawn by hand, are obviously going to look better than an upscale. And so yeah, I think that a lot of modders seem very interested in porting their mods to Legendary Edition. I think almost every active veteran mod developer wants to do it in some ways. So yeah, I know that a lot of videos and a lot of textures are going to be coming to Legendary Edition. I know that Project Variety is coming to Legendary Edition at some point.
That's one of my favorites as well.
Yeah. Expanded Galaxy mod is kind of in a weird maybe at the moment, because it is by far the biggest mod in the scene. And so I don't want to speak for Kinkajiro and, you know, say, oh yeah, it's coming, but he's thinking about it. And at the moment, it's kind of for the bigger mods, we're thinking, okay, how do we kind of look at how they were built originally and kind of reimagine them as a more stable and more standardized experience, I guess, like, you know, because now we're building all of these mods as a community, so we can kind of integrate them into other mods, make sure that we're kind of doing things consistently with each other, especially, you know, among the veteran community. So for example, if somebody's making like porting over their armor mods, to Legendary Edition, somebody else might be building a mod that adds a lot of new armor sets into stores. And so instead of just dumping all of these armor sets into the locker, we can go, okay, well, we can work together and we can make sure that your mod is part of my mod's store. And so it's just things like that that's going to make everything kind of just connected a little bit better.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that you're going to see, it's going to be a long time before you see, you know, the big mods make it to Legendary Edition, but eventually it's going to happen. It might be years. I think that in about a year from now, we'll really be well on our way to seeing that stuff happen, but it's going to be a while before you're going to see, you know, the big mods transferred over.
All the popular mods from the original trilogy, are all the veteran developers, are they still around, or have they moved on now? Or
well, there was a Giftfish who made things like Thane mod and ME3 Recalibrated and things like that. She left the scene out of protest, though I think that I know that the creator of the Priority Earth Overhaul mod said that he doesn't have any plans to mod Legendary Edition. But I know that most of the big modders from the original days they've actually started coming back. They're in our private dev Discord. So the creator of the Mass Effect Happy Ending mod has come back. The creator of Citadel Epilogue mod has come back. He's still kind of talking to us about how we're going to deal with that one being ported, because he's retired now, so he's trying to decide, do I want to do it myself, do I want to hand it over to someone else? But yeah, the people who were around in the early days have started coming back and, you know, popping their heads in and saying hello, and we've started talking to each other about, you know, how we're going to sort all of that kind of stuff out for Legendary Edition. But the important thing is those discussions are taking place. We're trying to figure out how to get everything moved over. So yeah,
good. It's exciting. It really is exciting.
Yeah,
I've started modding a few of you know, my original trilogy, you know, the original trilogy of that. So to hear some of those and might be coming over as well, it's definitely to look forward to.
And I think it's also important to point out that, you know, maybe Mass Effect Happy Ending mod doesn't make it to Legendary Edition, but somebody else like me, I'm going to be making my own Happy Ending mod. So even if your favorite mod doesn't make it to Legendary Edition, the concept or the features in that mod might end up being done by a different mod or a multitude of different mods. So yeah, just keep an eye on the scene, because we've got a lot of things in the work right now and it's very exciting.
Next up is Wolf Dragon. It says, what mods work best for the PC version and how do you mod through Origin app? Well, I suppose we don't really mod through the Origin app. We've got the Mass Effect Tweaks mod. So we have the Mass Effect Tweaks mod manager.
Yes.
On like the customer side, you know, the consumer side of it, which makes everything quite nice and easy for us. Is that the same what you use to actually mod the games, or is that just like the front end so that people can turn things on and off?
Yeah, so we've just released a new modding toolset. It's an evolution of the ME3 Explorer toolset, where it's essentially 7.0. It's called Legendary Explorer, and right now it is in open beta. You can download the latest nightly build from ME3 Tweaks Mod Manager and play around with the tools. They're obviously not in a stable state right now. We're still ironing out bugs, but we're hoping that within the next week or so, we're going to have it out for public release to everyone. So that's what we use to make tools. We deploy our mods through a multitude of different systems, but the main one that we deploy them through is DLC mods. So the idea is that we create a new DLC folder with, you know, the core files that make up a DLC, and then we mount that above the official DLC. And so that allows us to load new files in without messing with the base game files. And that's really important for compatibility, because it means, you know, everyone isn't just editing the same file. And one of the big changes that we're making for Legendary Edition modding, which is going to be one of those big foundational changes I was talking about earlier, is merge mods. So to give you an example of the kind of compatibility nightmare that we were running into with the original trilogy, there are quite a few base game files that can't be put in a DLC folder. So these would be things like entry menu or SFX game or startup. They're files that are loaded immediately when you boot the game. And what that means is that if a mod wanted to edit one of those files, they would need to edit that and ship the entire file in their mod. And that is a huge issue, because if you've got 4 different mods that edit that file, you then have to make a compatibility patch for every single variation that a user could be using those mods in. So if there's 4, that could be up to 16 different compatibility patches. So it gets pretty wild. I know that Hairy Shepley, which is the mod that adds facial hair to default Shepherd, had to ship like 15 different compatibility patches with, like, I think it was ME3 controller and like individual cooldowns. It was just, oh my god, I have no idea how awful that must have been to make. And so what we're going to be doing now is a new feature with ME3 Mod Manager, where you can basically write a script that will tell the game, okay, I need to open this file, make those changes to that package, and then save them in. And so you're not shipping a file at all with your mod, you're shipping instructions on how to make those changes to the file that the mod manager then does. And so what we're going to end up with there is no need to build compatibility patches for those mods. And so it's going to make things so much easier, not just for compatibility, but also just for making new mods like that, because there are a lot of mods that you never would have wanted to ship because of the fact that you were shipping such an important base game file. And so, yeah, that's one of the things that we're going to be making a huge change with. But yeah, so to go back to the original question, because I get a bit off on the tangent there, is we create DLC mods that ship files, and then that's kind of how we deal with content mods. And then when it comes to things like config edits, we also usually ship those in DLC mods. And then texture mods are an entirely other complicated thing that would be really difficult to go into, but we ship those with a program called Mass Effect Modder, which is designed entirely for texture modding. So yeah, we as an end user, really, you only need to worry about ME3 Tweaks Mod Manager and Mass Effect Modder, and I guess the Trilogy Save Editor if you want to play around with that. But otherwise, yeah, we want to make sure that the modding experience is really simple.
Wonderful. Jonathan Muller says, as an indie game developer, he's always interested in what it takes to mod games, not just using the Nexus mod manager, but going further, like ripping models, injecting his own assets, and even going as far as to change the game code. So his questions are, what apps would be required to mod Mass Effect, and what problems have you encountered along your modding journey may have stopped you from adding certain things into Mass Effect? So this is going to be your new toolkit, isn't it? That he'll need to.
Yeah, so you would definitely want to be using Legendary Explorer for that. The problems that we've run into, I think I just explained, which is, the compatibility nightmare. But I think also a huge issue that we've run into is just the fact that the games are not designed to be modded, and so you are working uphill for this entire
experience. Does it kind of work against you? Are you like fighting a battle? It wants to do one thing and you're trying to say no, look at this and do this instead.
Like there are just bizarre things that BioWare did in the code that probably made sense to them, but for a modder, you're like, why the fuck did you do that? Because it's just a nightmare. Like for example, for some reason in Mass Effect 2, squad selection images are hard coded, but in Mass Effect 3 they're not, which means that for Mass Effect 2 we have to write an incredibly complex new modding system in order to make that kind of thing editable. But in Mass Effect 3, it's kind of easy to do. And it's just things like that, like Mass Effect 1's file structure has changed a little bit now, so it's a little bit less of a pain, but it's still very weird. It's when you really start modding and playing around the files and seeing how things work and or more importantly, how things don't work, you really start to see how modding this game feels like trying to swim upstream with your arms and legs bound. It's not fun, but it can be very, very rewarding when you manage to get it done. So yeah, I mean, I'm just so impressed by our entire community and what they achieve, because they are all masochists. Because these games should not be moddable to the extent that they are, but somehow we've managed to get it done.
But it's a true testament to your talent, really.
Yeah, definitely not mine. I just play around with the basic tools, and edit videos in After Effects. So really the huge props has to go to the toolset programmers and some of the biggest veteran modders in the scene, because they're the ones really elevating the scene. I just mouth off.
And my final question here we got is from Sven 107. He says, now if he wants to add mods to a game, he has to overwrite and copy stuff into a game code, and then he needs to watch tutorials on how he can do it before he starts enjoying it. Yeah. I'm guessing this is kind of more of an old school way of doing things. He wanted to know why mods can't be more part of the game. I would say, is it something that, do you think maybe down the line that mods would be something that's integrated where you can then just go into a menu and turn them on and off as you wish? Or is that something that's completely never going to happen?
Yeah, I guess it really depends on the game. Like, for some games, you have to inject the files directly into the game for it to work, and it really depends on the engine. This is a big part of why DLC mods are such a important part of making that experience better for users, because if you don't like a mod, you just delete the DLC folder and that's it. Unfortunately, things like texture modding, as I mentioned earlier, are a nightmare. Because what you're essentially doing is you're updating the references to those textures in files, and which means that you can't really restore them to what they were before without completely replacing the original file. And so it's a kind of a bit of a nightmare in that regard. It was even worse for the trilogy because of high resolution textures and the issues that they arose. But I think that it really just comes down to what I was talking about earlier with official mod support. With Skyrim, you really don't have this issue because it's the difference between injection and wrapping. Having mods wrap onto the game is a lot nicer than having it be directly injected into the game and overwriting the files and replacing the original files. I guess to answer why, I think really it's a business decision. For EA, they don't really like people modding their games. They don't really have an issue with it, but they don't want to support it officially because it's not something they want to actively encourage. I know that some publishers like Bethesda, they love it. I personally believe that modding should be supported for all games. I think that it's an important part of what keeps the lights on for games, especially down the line. Like when you're trying to play a game that's 15, 20 years old, a lot of the time you have to mod it to get it to work. And so modding is quite important for the longevity and survival of games, especially in the archival sense. And so I think that more publishers should be openly supportive of it. But unfortunately, it's just the way it is. There's nothing that we can do about it.
I mean, going back to like Mass Effect 1, you're looking about 15 years old now, that game.
Yeah.
And without the mods and the textures and the videos and, all the extras that the lighting that, you can add into that original game, it really does improve, your experience of a game that hasn't aged very well as a base concept, really.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so yeah, absolutely, it should be supported. So I mean, I can see it's getting quite late now, so I'm going to take up any more of your time. I do appreciate you coming. Where is the best place for anybody that wants to get into the modding scene? Where can they find you? What do they need to do?
So the best thing to do is come join us on the Mass Effect Modding Discord. You can find us on Twitter. You can find a link to our Discord at Mass Effect Mods.
I'll link to it in the description as well. So
excellent, thank you. And you can also generally find a lot of our mods on Nexus Mods, or you can go to, if you want to start getting into Mass Effect modding, I highly suggest going over to the GitHub for Legendary Explorer. You can find that easily at bit.ly/Legendary Explorer and have a look at the tools. But yeah, that's about it. Just come join us, come say hello, and we'll get you sorted.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for your time. The modding community, we look forward to seeing what's coming out with the Legendary Edition.
Me too. Thanks for having me.
I want to say a big thank you to Audemus for joining me. I know it was quite late by the time we finished, and I really appreciate talking to him. It was a really interesting conversation. To see my thoughts on the expanded Galaxy mod, click the links on screen now. And a big thank you to all my patrons, including Nerdy Dude. Don't forget to give this video a boom on the old like button, and I'll see you next time, Commander.